Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Lazo, and I'm with the Emerging Technologies Caucus. And as part of this caucus, we host micro talks during the MX sections. If you have ever heard of the social media tool Slack and wondered a lot of what on earth it was, please come and join us at our booth. We're right at the front of the MX, and hear from our awesome speaker, John Shear, who's going to be explaining how to use Slack. Thanks, John.
All right. So this is not something that I'm being paid for from Slack. This is not a customer review of Slack. This is something from the Emerging Technology Caucus where we're asked to provide some feedback on the tool. So Carmine, this is for you. All right, we're going to give you the feedback on what the heck Slack is. So I've done exercises all over the world, and I've managed projects in all 50 states, all the territories, about 20 different countries. And this is one of the best tools that I've found just recently to be able to use to collaborate for planning and exercise work. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what's the problem we're having with planning and exercises. We'll talk specifically about some of the challenges that are out there when you're trying to collaborate with large teams. We'll give you an overview of Slack, and then I'll give you some case studies. I've got 60-some slides, and I've got about 15 minutes, so this is going to go very quickly, so hold on. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to ask. So the first thing is I am from Hawaii, and so when people think about the hazardous conditions that are out there in Hawaii, this is what they think about. And I am not a surfer, but I sympathize with people, and that's what the view that they have. This is the other thing people think about is the sharks that are out there. But really, we've had a lot of tropical storms and disturbances just this past year. In fact, we've gotten to the point where there's been a little bit of a fatigue. We've had, I think, 17 named storms that have been out there. And so as we start to work through doing hurricane planning and exercise and whatnot, it's been a little bit of a challenge as people start to get that fatigue. So again, I work in this preparedness cycle. We're working on planning, training, and exercises. And I found that when we're trying to involve the whole community, one of the hardest things is how do you get people engaged without creating a situation where your email inbox is full. This is one of the latest stats that I had. There's about 108 billion emails sent daily, and I get at least 120 business emails a day. I'm sure all of you get at least that amount. And what tends to happen is all of these exercise projects and planning projects flood your email inbox, and then when you're trying to find a specific project, you've got to go search by term, find out where it is, and I don't care what email product you're using, it's painful. So it's really just one of those things that I've never been able to get to inbox zero, and that's kind of my goal, but I just haven't figured out a way to make it work. So when we're working through the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program tasks, there's all types of exercises that you can use these collaboration tools for, ranging from tabletops all the way through to full scales, and I'm going to talk through how we're going to do that with the case studies that I mentioned. From a planning perspective, planning is probably one of the more painful things that's out there. If you've ever worked on a planning project, I just helped the state of Hawaii finish their hurricane plan this past summer, and I'm working with the state of Hawaii now on their strategic national stockpile plan. For both of those projects, I've been using Slack. And again, I'll give you a case study of how that's being used and how that worked together. You can see your intent is you work through the 6-step planning process that FEMA talks about, and just imagine the flood of emails if you really get the whole community involved. Now you've got 30, 40 planning team members all sending emails, all having questions about what they need to work on, and that's something that you've got to work through. So given the fact that most planning teams form up on an ad hoc basis, there's just not a lot of time to spin them up. What we found is if you look at the FEMA response tenets, one of the things that they talk about is bringing in these creative solutions. So some of those websites here for some of the apps and other types of things that have been developed to support disasters are listed here. One of the ones I'm going to talk to you about today is Slack. So this is a tool that was developed for the business community. I found out about it when I was planning a community event in Honolulu. We brought a Maker Faire there for the first time ever. And a Maker Faire is all volunteer-run, coordinated event. And we had volunteers from throughout the community to post this and put this together for about 1,000 participants this past year. And I'm on the planning committee. I was the co-chair, and one of my other co-chairs said, use Slack. It's great. It'll clear your inbox out. I fought him for weeks and weeks and weeks until I first kind of started to get my toes, into the water on using Slack, and I found it's fantastic. So this is from Slack themselves. They actually sent me this presentation, so you can see the slide backgrounds change a little bit. So I am going to kind of present from their viewpoint how they've started this. So the first thing is it has been built as a messaging app for teams. So their viewpoint wasn't building this for the emergency management community. This is built for any team that's out there. So there's teams from NASA that are using it. There's teams from throughout the business community that are using it. The idea is that they're trying to make working lives simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. So what they looked about, they said, most of the time being spent at work is being spent reading emails, answering emails, searching for information, gathering information. Anybody that's been involved in a work environment knows it's probably higher than 47%. When you get there in the morning, 8 a.m., and then by the time you hit noon, maybe you've gotten through all the inbox that you need to. So what they tried to do is get through all the chaos that was out there in dealing with emails and Google Drive and you name it when they're trying to get the teams on the same page. And what they did was they came up with this app to tame that chaos. So it's the fastest growing business app ever. So you can see that they've got daily active users of over 1.7 million just this past month. And there's a reason behind that. The reason that there's all these active users is it's an easy to use tool. So these are the top cities that are using Slack. Hopefully some of you guys are from these cities and you can kind of see that there's a lot of peers out there that are going through and using them. They got some proof points here in terms of return on investment for using this tool. They talk about 49% reduction in email. So again, you're getting your day back. They talk about a 25% reduction in meetings, and they talk about a 32% increase in productivity. And then 80% agree that Slack has improved the transparency in the teams. I think this is the same thing as those 4 out of 5 dentists. I don't know who that 5th dentist is. I have no idea who the person is that's saying that it doesn't improve the productivity. And then they said 79% have said this improved the culture of their teams. Again, a lot of culture is based on communication and making sure there's visibility of what's going on. You tend to keep people in loop by CCing them or BCCing them, and it just gets to be a flood of information. If you're using Slack, you get rid of all of that. So the idea is keeping it simple. Now we're transitioning back to my slides. So the first thing, I'm going to walk you through the steps that you need to do to get on board for this platform. Step 1, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of the Slack homepage, slack.com, you create a new team. Click on that button. You go to step 2. You sign up with your email address. Everybody clear with signing up with their email address? Step 3, you name your Slack team that you're going to use. So in this particular case for our booth here, I created a Slack channel, typed in this one. This is the one that we're using here internally. Step 4, you pick your username. And step 5, you invite people to the team. That's it. You're on board. Now you've got Slack running. So you can see the advantage of having that kind of a system, 5-step process. I've worked on the state's largest hurricane exercise, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we were looking at a 4-hour training program to get people up to speed on the web-based tool that they wanted us to use. Inviting full team members, again, is a fairly simple process. Put their email addresses in. You can invite a bunch of people at one time, click a button, and everybody's in. So there's also a getting started kind of user guide. And I've been using this for a while, and I still haven't used a user guide, and I've been able to use it with no problem. But again, if you want to be a guru and pulling all the integration features, recommend going to the user guide. So let me give you a case study that I mentioned. So the first thing we'll talk about is the challenge we had in updating the state's hurricane plan. So the state's hurricane plan was last written and published in 2009. So in July of this past year, the state came to me and said, can you help us to get this out the door? And they gave me 3 weeks to get 500-some comments incorporated, totally rewrite the plan, incorporate new graphics, pull it into the next level, and get it published and signed off by the governor. So the only way we were able to make that happen was by using this tool. Using Slack made this happen, and I'll tell you, we had 17 days to get the final draft out the door, working 24-hour ops. The teams we had, I had a team on Hawaii and I had a team on the East Coast. We'd hand things off at midnight, and on Slack, everybody could see where everybody was working through, and you'd have this everything make it happen. Doug Main was the director of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, so the State Emergency Management Agency director was on the system. And he was providing comments right away, so the entire team that he had from the state could see he was engaged, the senior leaders watching what was going on, providing input. Hey, I like this chart, I don't like this chart, fix this graphic. Again, right where anybody can see in Slack. And then in case he had to take version control, that's one of the biggest problems in a planning process is version control. You lose version control, now somebody's wasted 8 or 10 hours working on a previous version. So using Slack, you'd announce if you're on that particular document, you say, I've got version control, and you take over. Now, you can have some of that functionality with Google Drive and Google Docs and see where people are working, but again, in this type of perspective, we were using Google Drive as almost our library and archiving the drafts that were finished and using Slack for the working documents we were working through. And you can see some of the other types of advantages. Large files. I mean, state systems can't really handle more than 10 megabyte files. So here we were able to post a 12 megabyte file. I was able to send information to my editor and say, here's the things I need to work on. Pay attention to this. She was working in North Carolina. I never saw her. Everything was handled through Slack. The next one that we worked on in terms of a planning project is one that I'm working on right now, and that's updating the state's medical countermeasure plan. This time they gave me 65 days to update the plan versus the 17 days. And the idea was, again, bringing people onto the team, quickly telling the team members what they needed to work on, and being able to get that feedback. Here's the tool I want you to use. Here you can put spreadsheets, graphics, PowerPoint, doesn't matter what the file is, providing that information so they're able to see it. And then, again, sharing information in a channel that everybody on the team can see. So even though you might just be communicating with one person, in this case it was our disability coordinator, you're able to share information that anybody else that she might want to bring on later can then get up to speed quickly. Imagine if that's sent by email, now it's trapped in her email, now she needs to send all the email trails that I've been sending to her, she's got to forward that to the next person to bring them up to speed. So again, that was one of the main advantages we saw from it. The other thing was things like sending information back and forth on drafts, getting quick feedback on about the latest and greatest files that are out there. And you can see that there's things like request for information tracking. So typically you'll have a spreadsheet or something you're managing where you're trying to send information out. Hey, what's the question? What are we trying to work through? In this particular case, Slack has spent a lot of time building their search function. Very impressive search function that allows you to find exactly the files you're looking for. In this particular case, we're looking for chain of custody documents, and it highlighted those information right so we could find those files. And then I mentioned I was the lead controller for the state's largest hurricane exercise back in 2014. I didn't use this tool. And I'm telling you, it was extremely frustrating to bring new people up to speed. We had thousands of responders taking part in the exercise, dozens of controllers located in all the different counties, and to manage that, it was all by email, and again, it was extremely frustrating. So for this year, I'm managing the state's the state's national stockpile exercise. I started to use them and bring them into Slack and kind of see what are the things that they need to do to get that exercise off the ground. So you can see the advantage of having your exercise planning team. You can have a channel just for the planning team. You can have a channel for the operations, for the planning, for logistics. Every one of the people that they're going to be involved in the exercise process can have a separate channel where they're discussing information for a 6 or 9 month build-up when they're working on that exercise. Same thing for the control. You can use this during the exercise itself, so when you're asking, hey, did inject number 17 go in, again, all that's showing up in Slack, and you're able to get visibility for the entire control team no matter where they're located throughout the state. And then you could also use it for your evaluation team. So the evaluators, again, sharing information, private channel that only they can see, working through all the issues that they need to work through from an evaluation standpoint, but very quickly bring people up to speed on what they need to work on. I used it also with kind of a light mode when it comes to tabletop exercise support. I planned 2 exercises for the governor of the state of Hawaii this past year, and again, getting information back and forth, trying to get people engaged, but there's definitely pushback. So this is the feedback I got from my client into getting into Slack. She's like, why would I want to use Slack? Is it easier than email or texting? Because she can get me in about 5 seconds if she emails me or texts me, but it's not really her ability to get me. It's my ability to manage that information and make sure that I'm tracking for that one particular project what's taking place instead of having to dig through all my emails and text for 14 different projects that I'm managing. Okay? So hopefully that was all common sense. I got about 13 minutes out of the 15 minutes I was given. So what kind of questions do you have? And I will repeat the question for you.
So you mentioned setting up, how do you set up those channels? What does that look like?
Sure. Again, you can see that, I'll see if I can find an example what it looked like. The channels show up automatically. There's a general channel that shows up automatically, and I think there's a miscellaneous one that shows up automatically. And then all you have to do is add another channel that you want, and you'll be able to pull that in. So right here is the channel, sorry. This is what I was talking about when it comes to channels. So the channels they have listed automatically is general and random, and then you can just add new channels that you'd want. So if you want an exercise channel, a planning channel, whatever you want to have, you just add those channels in and invite people in that you want them to be involved in that. Invite them into that. So the question was, can you invite them into that specific channel? And the answer is yes. You'd invite them right to that channel. Right, so the question was who sets it up, and typically it's the project team lead that would set that up, but anybody can establish a Slack channel, and then again, as a manager, if I say I don't like that Slack channel, it's duplicating efforts of somebody else, I can administratively control that. Can you bring two Slack channels together? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but yeah, maybe. Right, if there's two groups that are working through stuff, I'm not sure. We'll track it down. Any other questions? Sure. Sure. No, that's a good question. So again, there's a file. It is one of the things that you do have the ability to get dual two-factor authentication in the paid version of Slack that gives you a little more security when it comes to that, and it is being housed by a private company, so that's one of the things you got to take a look at the user terms and make sure you're talking to your IT guys so that it matches up. Okay. So the question was about where are the files kept? Is it housed on your server? Is it housed on their server? Again, it's a cloud-based solution, so it's being housed by that company. All right, guys, I'm at 15 minutes. Thank you for your time.